Sam, for bloody brilliant games here at This Means Warp, and Paul from Outlier Games has been very, very kind to talk to us. Paul, thank you for giving us a moment of your time.
No worries.
Just having played a little bit of the game, it gives me really, really strong FTL and Loves in Dangerous Space-Time aesthetic and obviously the type of gameplay. Would you say those are the two main inspirations for it, or is there something else that really inspired this type of title?
Yeah, well, it definitely inspired by FTL. The format of the game is very similar to the structure of FTL in that it's roguelike, procedurally generated, so it changes every time you play, and there's a huge host of systems that you can get and encounters and things. The other element, yeah, Lovers in the Dangerous Space-Time is a great kind of ship management. There's also a lot of multiplayer games like Overcooked that really have that kind of frenetic action. So those are the two really the genres that we're trying to blend, the roguelike and the multiplayer element as well.
And in terms of the multiplayer, you've gone for 4-player. Was that a decision because that's obviously the standardised multiplayer form, or would you say there was a specific kind of gameplay reason behind it? Because you could have gone for 2-player. Obviously, it can be played 2-player. But why would you say that 4-player is kind of the best way to play this?
Yeah, well, 4-player works really well on consoles, so that was really the thinking there. So it is available single player. It can be played local multiplayer with up to 4 people, and it's online multiplayer as well. So you can get matchmaking and join other people's crews online. So it felt like a good balance. If you have a lot of people, then there's more going on the screen, so it gets very chaotic already with four people.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make sure it's still understandable and strategic as well, as well as having that kind of cooperation aspect.
And in terms of the upgrade system, of course you've gone for orbs as opposed to a standard kind of upgrade menu. From that little bit we played there, we couldn't see if the upgrades kind of expire as you kind of don't pick them up. Could you tell me about the thinking as to having them be a thing where you've got to actively go and pick up the upgrades as opposed to just a generic menu that may pop up after you've leveled up?
Yeah, it's a really good question because this went through a lot of iterations. So really the reason is the developing a menu that's accessible for 4 people at once is really tough, right? So there's like cursors going all over the screen, you've got different pop-ups and things. So in this we had trying to change of how we did that by switching to everything being physical. So that's very intuitive for people to understand. You pick something up, you put it down, and everybody can do that at once. So if you've got some person that's repairing the ship, someone that's firing the gun, someone that's installing an upgrade, everybody can do the same live, rather than having to wait and break up the action for menus.
And then, can I ask you about the art style? Of course, it's very kind of, almost like over-exaggerated, almost like a pop sort of aesthetic. Can you tell me behind the thing behind that, and then looking at obviously the gameplay screens? Obviously, as you said, we see a lot of FTL inspiration, but in terms of the move around, in terms of the way you've designed the ship, for example.
Yeah, the art style really the core thing to get across in terms of gameplay was clarity, right? So we chose a relatively simplistic cartoon style, so that it's very accessible for people to get into, and also clear what's going on when you're playing.
And then final question, in terms of going forward, could you tell us about the game's release date with the roaching and early access, that kind of thing, and the systems it's coming out on as well? Yeah,
so the demo just came out a week ago, so you can play it on Steam, and that's got single player, local multiplayer and online multiplayer. And the full game we're aiming for early access release January, February next year.
Perfect, thank you. And it's just on Steam, is that correct?
On Steam,
yeah, on Steam.
Hopefully consoles after that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for your time, Paul.
No worries.
A very, very big thank you to Paul from Outlier Games for talking to us about their new title, This Means Warp. It very much had shades of, as I said in that interview, FTL and Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time. The gameplay is very solid, the controls are a nice mix of simplicity, so it's very easy to pick up and play, but they have a level of complexity that once you've mastered, you can be completing tasks in half the time you were initially. That said, I think the procedural generation does add a bit of longevity to the title, but I wonder if it's going to run into a similar problem that FTL does, and that's, yes, there has a lot of replayability, but the reasons for coming back to playing these games when very much the objectives are very much the same every playthrough you do is going to be something to have a look at. Though, I will say, to me, This Means Warp is one to keep an eye on.